We're going to do it together. We have to unify, put our petty differences aside, who's more powerful, who has the information, and let's work together in lockstep. You, the people, your stories are fascinating, they're real, they're organic, and they're the truth.
Right now with Ann Vandersteel. Good evening and welcome to Right Now with Ann Vandersteel. 60 minutes of hard-hitting headline news and personal impact stories as usual, all signal and zero noise. Tonight, sadly, Melania Trump's mother has passed away. We'll briefly touch on that at the open of the show. We wish her our condolences. And Abex Technologies. What is Abex and what does it mean? We're going to dive into that. This is quite a surprise to many down here in the United States. And Dr. Lee Vliet. There's a much bigger picture developing on COVID and COVID treatments. We're going to touch on that this evening because it's critical that you have all the facts. And Florida congressional candidate Macy on deck. Why she has to run. All this brought to you by the satellite phone store. Go to sat123.com. Get your free Inmarsat satellite while supplies last. Also pick up some backup emergency power supplies as well as food. LightsOutBeef.com is our preferred vendor for delicious, never injected with mRNA vaccines. mRNA is a terrible thing and it should not be in your cows. Get your free from vaccine beef at LightsOutBeef.com. We'll be right back after more messages from Brighteon.
In recent years, the world has only become increasingly more chaotic and uncertain. Disruptions to the supply chain have resulted in global food shortages, making it difficult for us to access the very resources we need to live in a functioning society. That's why it is now more important than ever to be prepared for the unexpected. Here at Brighteon and BrighteonStore.com, we've made it our mission to help you and your loved ones be prepared for any emergency, which is why we are dedicated to bringing you a wide selection of ultra-clean and lab-verified superfoods, supplements, preparedness items, and other health products. So support your health and this free speech platform by shopping at BrighteonStore.com today.
Many of you have been asking, where am I getting the energy from? Where is the glow coming from? What's changed with your hair and skin? Well, simply in the last month, I started taking a product, C60 Evo. If you go to c60evo.com/Ann Vandersteel, you too can get radiant energy, mental focus with C60 Evo's ESS 60. What is it? That is pure C60. Get that increased flexibility, immunity, and longevity. And guess what, folks? It's not only for people too. You can get some for your pets. My animals are on it now. And that's right, I'm having trouble keeping up with Vegas, my dog, who I like to go on long walks with in the morning. He is battling back on the heat down here with his C60 Evo as well. Go to c60evo.com/Ann Vandersteel and try their delicious oils that you can eat and add into salads or put on your food, and also incredible facial serums and creams that are making a massive difference in the texture and feel of my skin. c60evo.com/Ann Vandersteel. And good evening. It is with deep sadness and our sincere condolences from all of us here at Brighteon that we offer our condolences to Melania Trump and her family on the loss of her mother. She tweeted earlier, "It is with deep sadness that I announce the passing of my beloved mother, Amalia." Trump wrote on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, that Amalia Naves was a strong woman who had always carried herself with grace, warmth, and dignity. She was entirely devoted to her husband, daughters, grandson, and son-in-law. We will miss her beyond measure and continue to honor and love her legacy. Well, Melania Trump did, by the way, sponsor her parents' immigration to the United States, and they took the oath of office to become citizens at a New York City courthouse in 2018 while President Trump was still in office. The Slovenian immigrants, a former car dealer and textile factory worker, had been living in the U.S. as permanent residents. Isn't it interesting that they would come here legally and lawfully, yet we are still troubled by the regime in power? We are putting, believe it or not, Biden's illegals in hotels, airports, police stations, on soccer fields, in community centers, and now schools. Even the biggest bleeding heart liberal should be appalled that Joe Biden invited millions of people to live here without an approved by Congress plan for where to put them. It's absolutely ridiculous that a Congress created to serve we the people is allowing this to happen in our country. I don't want to wait for history to judge this resident at 1600. I am judging him right now. Joe Biden should be impeached for opening the border and for creating an unconstitutional, illegal invasion nightmare. He should be prosecuted for facilitating child sex trafficking and the fentanyl crisis, and he should be treated like the traitor to America that he obviously is. And that concludes my rants on Joe Biden for the evening. And as I follow up, I looked up the Airbus employees. Yesterday, we ran a story with guests on regarding a vaccine-injured family member, Tim McAdams, who worked at Airbus Helicopter. And as a follow-up, I looked into the Airbus employees, and he had said that there was about 500. Well, they got back to me this morning to let me know that the 500 Airbus employees were just for the helicopter division there in Granbury, Texas. The U.S. Airbus Group in North America also includes helicopters, airplanes, and engineering, et cetera, actually has 3,200. So for the mandate that Airbus forced that bioweapon into, it was more than just 500 arms. It was 3,200. And guess what? That's only in North America. There's actually more in Europe, Airbus France. This mandate was company-wide, so it impacted many more than what we earlier reported. We wanted to correct the record. And your money right now is becoming ever more precious. That's right. With the financial shift happening worldwide, there's lots of moving parts happening across the world markets. And because Americans are so America-centric, most of the time we actually fail to see the world through a global lens. Well, if you've been following me on Twitter, you know I've been following a specific company. And I've been following the world markets for some time and been telling you all to buy and hold metals for wealth preservation. Well, this company came to my attention through some of my connections who actually are traders. Abex is a little-known company, but it's with a who's who on the board. It's a market infrastructure player known as Abex Technologies and has said to raise fresh capital to support the launch of its commodity exchange business. The Toronto-listed company said it will bring $27 million in by selling ordinary and preferred shares. The preferred shares will be sold to units of the exchange giant CBOE. The CBOE is the Chicago Board of Exchange. That is a big player out there in the global markets. Another company buying is TLW as well as Traxys. Abex has designated the three investors as strategic partners in their business, and Abex is led by former Goldman Sachs and NYMEX executives. Its chief executive officer and founder is a gentleman by the name of Josh Crum, who's a former Goldman commodity strategy and research executive. And in September, Jeff Curry, Goldman's former top commodities researcher and an early respondent of the commodity supercycle theory, proponent of the supercycle theory, joined the Abex board as a director. Now, who is Abex? Well, they have described itself as a developmental stage financial software and market infrastructure company. They focus on global commodity exchanges, digital marketplaces, and they were granted regulatory approval to operate as a recognized market operator and approved clearinghouse by the Monetary Authority of Singapore. What does this mean? It means they are going to be open for business to trade liquid natural gas, gold, and other precious metals, nickel, and more. This is a big deal as the global economy shifts, and liquid natural gas is clearly the leader when it comes to fueling Asia. Remember, BRICS economy is 75% of the world's GDP. This exchange is poised to explode, and it's one to watch. All right, speaking of explosions, we are still feeling the reverberations of the COVID hoax exploding in all of our faces, namely in Pfizer's, as their stock continues to descend into the pits of hell where it belongs. But you know what? There's so much misinfo, disinfo purposefully out there that I decided we need to bring in an expert, someone who sees clinically the after effects of COVID and is still treating. And this is a leading industry expert, somebody who also runs her own foundation, Truth for Health Foundation.org, truthforhealth.org. Dr. Lee Vliet joins me now. Dr. Vliet, great to see you, and thank you for making time to discuss what some people are finding is still troubling in the after effects of COVID while they're trying to get help through natural supplements and through trusted partners out there. Let's talk about this, shall we?
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here, Anne. You are a warrior for medical freedom and preserving our constitutional republic.
Well, it should be a battle picked up by everybody, but specifically I want to talk to you about COVID because there's supplements out there that while a lot of them are excellent, some are pushing products that frankly could be good for people, but without proper testing, you're seeing clinically patients coming in that are suffering bruising, and we're trying to get to the bottom of this. So let's talk clinically about what you're seeing with your COVID patients.
Well, let me just give your listeners a framework. First of all, there's a lot in the news about spike protein damage and spike detox. That's only one of the 6 classes of damage from the COVID shots, long COVID, COVID illness, and a lot of other medical conditions like obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and autoimmune disorders, and even exposure to 5G and electromagnetic radiation. The 6 classes of damage, one of them is vascular damage and micro blood clotting, which is an effect of the spike protein and a target of the spike detox products. There are many of them on the market. And what my concern is that many health professionals are marketing products targeted at the spike protein without educating people about the risk that if you take too many anticoagulant supplements, then the flip side of that is a risk of extensive internal bleeding, which can be in the brain, in the gut, it can be under the skin. And one of the things that I've seen in patients of mine who suddenly started taking nattokinase, bromelain, curcumin in the larger doses in some of the products is that they didn't know whether or not they had a risk of micro blood clots because their doctors hadn't done any testing for D-dimer or fibrinogen or other markers of the presence of micro blood clots and the risk of clots as opposed to the risk of bleeding. And literally, they started taking these supplements and didn't check with me, and most of the people didn't need it. Their D-dimer was normal because that's a blood test I check regularly, particularly in people who've gotten the COVID shots or have had COVID illness or are being told they have long COVID. I think most of the long COVID patients are vaccine injured patients because I rarely see someone who just had COVID and did not get the COVID shot who has long COVID. But I am seeing it. In fact, there's a recent published study that showed that those who got the COVID shots and boosters have an increased risk of what's called long COVID. It's vaccine injury. But the problem is that the patients I'm talking about who sent me pictures had bruising all up and down the legs under the skin. I mean, it was extensive bleeding under the skin. And so immediately, their other doctors couldn't figure out what was going on. And I said, well, what have you added in the way of supplements? And it was one of these combination spike detox products. So what I would say to people is that, and if you are bleeding that much under the skin to cause the kind of bruising that you're showing in that picture, which is what I've seen in real patients in my medical practice, then the risk is that you're also losing blood through the GI tract. And women are having more abnormal uterine bleeding. So if you take these supplements, and we have a list in our new vaccine injury treatment guide that'll be posted this weekend. There are about 14 common nutraceuticals and supplements that people regularly take that all have antiplatelet, fibrin. In other words, they are fibrinolytics. They break down fibrin in the blood clots, or they are anticoagulant and block the coagulation pathway. So there are about 14 different common supplements. I mean, vitamin E, fish oil are just two of them, bromelain, curcumin, nattokinase. And so when you start just taking supplements without a plan, without having proper lab tests done, then you risk adverse interactions and adverse side effects. But the other part of the problem, Anne, is that that's just one of the 6 classes of damage. We've got to look at the broader picture, and people really need help, which is what we've been doing with our nutraceutical approach. Not only do we have high quality products that are manufactured in a good manufacturing practice compliant facility in the United States, and they are certified, they're also the manufacturing plant is inspected regularly by the FDA and US FDA, and our product data sheets are subject to regulatory review. So there are no claims that have not been backed up by the scientific studies.
Yeah.
But we put them together and give people guidance in, here's your foundational health and resilience formula that I've been recommending for most of the 40 years I've been in practice, with some new things added targeted to current problems: inflammation, endocrine disruption, oxidative stress, disruption in the ion channels, and immune dysregulation and vascular damage. So you've got all 6 of those classes of damage. You've got all of the endocrine organs affected that most people are not talking about. And I'm actually doing a comprehensive lab evaluation, and I put that list in our Truth for Health Foundation. People can go and order a lot of those tests themselves at Select a Test or testing.com. Quest Diagnostics has a self-test option for people.
So I guess I want to just summarize a little bit here. Essentially, what I hear you saying is, first of all, I just want to recap. We've gone through COVID, and we've now learned that we can't trust the medical profession as it comes to the FDA, the NIH, the CDC, and those that colluded and just took their protocols and ran with it, despite the fact that even on the package insert of the bioweapon itself, there was no description at all. It was intentionally left blank, so people were blindly injecting things without informed consent. That should have been a massive red flag for any patient that went to a doctor that was injecting something into their patient's arm without even knowing what was in the shot. To me, is a massive red flag, and that's a failure on the physician's just disposition of do no harm, at least know what the heck it is I'm doing. Now we've gone through the washer, and it's year 4, right, since they declared the pandemic, and we are being challenged with the naturopathic community is pushing supplements to try to combat the side effects, as you just said, 6 different outcomes of problems from COVID. But one of them being the cardiovascular, which has led to people trying to deal with the spike protein that is seemingly being manufactured out of control, particularly by those people who took the bioweapon injection. They now have a
and who keep getting the boosters. The more boosters you get, the more damage that's occurring, and that's been borne out in data worldwide.
And exactly. So at this point, we have to ask if these physicians that continue to push these things, if they're just ignorant or they're complicit or what. But more importantly, we've got to get to the consumer. Just like, everybody buyer beware, consumers need to start being more, they need to start advocating for themselves more and stop being so blind about just taking somebody because they're in an authority position and have a lab coat on, or they're in a government position, whatever, that they should just take it at face value. If we haven't learned anything at all, we should have learned that.
And that is the program we just did last night on Faith Over Fear. And it is on our website, truthforhealth.org. Click on Faith Over Fear. And the program from January 9th walks people through a systematic approach to being more proactive. And I explain in no uncertain terms what the problems are in my own profession right now. Medical care in the United States is deteriorating. That's partly by design, by being overwhelmed, and it's partly by doctors choosing to sign insurance contracts and be forced to see 40 or 50 people a day, and they're putting profits and politics over patients. So
Right.
I'm just as critical of my own profession as I
Good.
am of others who are failing to carry out their oath to serve the people that they represent, whether it's doctors, lawyers, judges, elected officials, law enforcement, military. It's across the board. And you and I are both very outspoken in calling out those who are not honoring their oath to their constituents.
Correct.
And doctors have, in many settings, we were trying to rescue people in the hospitals trapped on the COVID death protocol. Doctors and nurses knew what they were doing. They knew people were dying, and they did it anyway. And doctors are being paid incentives to push these vaccines. Hospitals were paid massive bounties by the government for the COVID protocols that they knew were killing people.
That's
And
right.
we did a whole press conference, Biden's bounty on your life. And that's the hospital homicides are real. The vaccine homicides are real. And it is Dr. Dennis Rancourt estimated in his research, along with Edward Dowd, that more than 17 million people worldwide have died as a result of the COVID shots. So it is critical that people become proactive, take charge of their health, and we have a whole systematic plan that we've been teaching through these seminars that I'm doing every Tuesday night with my team. So I urge everyone listening, please go and listen to last night's program. We walk you through the steps you need to take to get very proactive, keep your medical records, make a notebook, have a plan of action, and understand how you put the pieces together to protect your life and your health.
It's critical. And sadly, we have to advocate for ourselves in every aspect of our life. And as you said, we take our civic duty responsibly, and we are learning how to get active locally so that we can start to hold these elected, so we say selected politicians, because they're not public servants. They are truly politicians, and they're corporate politicians at that, holding them accountable.
Yes.
Lastly, we have a couple of minutes left here. I'm looking at your Faith Over Fear podcast here, and you talk about the Marberg Pandemic Declaration and how this is, as I've been talking about, what Todd has been educating the world about is that, yeah, we are in the middle of a medical martial law, a Marberg pandemic declared and codified in the Federal Register as well as congressional record going back to December 9th of 2020, which is why our Constitution has been suspended, why the border is wide open. So in your estimation, Dr. Vliet, is the Marberg Pandemic Declaration a hemorrhagic fever disease, giving us a suspended constitution and medical martial law? Was that necessary for them to just say Article 4, Section 4 doesn't matter, we don't need to defend our borders, and let's usher them in as quickly as possible?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, but that certainly appears to be the strategy that was used. And Todd Callender and other attorneys have made that very point. The Marberg Declaration actually took effect January 1st, 2024, although it was in place in 2020, as you talked about. Right? Remember, December 2020 was when the Secretary of Health and Human Services knew that Biden would be coming into office. So I think that was done on purpose.
Yeah.
After the 2020 election and the stolen election that everyone saw in real time being stolen, and has been well documented since then, since nothing's been done about that, that gave them essentially carte blanche to carry out the nefarious plan to destroy America, which is what they've been systematically doing. Now, you mentioned Biden, but remember that all of this was going on under the Obama administration, because I was writing about the open border in the 8 years under Obama, and the diseases coming across the border. And the program we did on January 2nd for Faith Over Fear was for me to update people on the diseases coming across the border now that are in worse numbers than what we had through the 8 years of Obama when I was writing and speaking extensively about it. So people need to understand that's why being so proactive with your own healthcare is critical.
That's
Getting
right.
supplements and vitamins and medicines that you may need on hand for at least a 6-month supply is really critical.
That's right.
Our emergency rooms are being overwhelmed with the flood of illegals.
That's right.
And so
right.
American citizens are having difficulty getting seen in emergency rooms and urgent care centers.
Well, Dr. Vliet, we have got to get to a commercial break here, but I appreciate your time and thank you for bringing clarity to this confusing process called medicine. It doesn't have to be, but people have to get a little bit more proactive and advocate for themselves and actually get a baseline lab so they know what they're dealing with before they start popping any kind of pills.
That is your roadmap.
That's the roadmap.
To recovery, health, and resilience. You need a plan.
That's
and you need a roadmap.
Thank you, Dr. Vliet. You can be found at truthforhealth.org. So please, everybody, visit Dr. Vliet's website and do pay attention to her podcast. They are brilliant and full of great information. All right, coming up after the next commercial break, Florida congressional candidate Mara Macy joins us on why she's running. She's got an interesting story, and I'm hoping that you're going to want to give her some support. We'll be right back.
Free state of Florida. Yeah.
Do you feel pretty free?
No, I would say our elections don't give me any more confidence than I think any elections in the rest of the country. I know specifically of a couple of races that had some pretty interesting things go on. And me and my friend were part of the people taking pictures of the Wi-Fi access from St. Johns County precincts back in November of 2022. And it was very interesting to see that every precinct we went to was connected to the same network.
To celebrate the new year, we're having the biggest sale ever on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save 60% on our Goose Down comforters, the best comforters ever. They go perfectly with our MyPillow bed sheets and duvet covers. Save 25% on our brand new kitchen towels. They're made with the same technology as our famous My Towels. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. Our seasonal flannel sheets are finally in. You save up to 50% and they sell out fast every year, so order now. They're truly the best flannel sheets you'll ever sleep on. Or save up to 80% on all our clearance items. And this is where it gets even better. For a limited time, your entire order ships absolutely free. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use that promo code to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. And for a limited time, your order ships absolutely free.
Many of you have been asking, where am I getting the energy from? Where is the glow coming from? What's changed with your hair and skin? Well, simply in the last month, I started taking a product, C60 Evo. If you go to c60evo.com/Ann Vandersteel, you too can get radiant energy, mental focus with C60 Evo's ESS 60. What is it? That is pure C60. Get that increased flexibility, immunity, and longevity. And guess what, folks? It's not only for people too. You can get some for your pets. My animals are on it now. And that's right, I'm having trouble keeping up with Vegas, my dog, who I like to go on long walks with in the morning. He is battling back on the heat down here with his C60 Evo as well. Go to c60evo.com/Ann Vandersteel and try their delicious oils that you can eat and add into salads or put on your food, and also incredible facial serums and creams that are making a massive difference in the texture and feel of my skin. c60evo.com/Ann Vandersteel. And welcome back for the second half of the show. I want to remind everybody on January 30th, I am absolutely 100% invested and behind and not paid to join in with the tacticalcivics.com organization. Tactical Civics is a group of folks that have gotten together. They have established chapters nationwide, over 1,300 and growing, and we're having a marathon that day. Save America Marathon. Pete Santilli, myself, Scott McKay, and many other of your favorite Patriot broadcasters are going to be out simulcasting this marathon of 18 hours where we will be interviewing guests on the efficacy and the reason why we should have county grand juries that are looking at the evidence, which already is everywhere on election fraud and COVID fraud. And we're going to start to indict the county officials at the local level through the state, as well as we'll be dealing with the federal. And again, as you know, there's a declaration of military accountability out there, and the military is going to start to go after their own. So join us for this incredible event on Saturday, January 30th. Lindell TV will also be a participant. Mike is absolutely ascribed to this, so he sees the benefits of we the people taking back the government. Also, as a health reminder, Vandersteel Health is out and about. I am absolutely still on the superfood train. It's what I have every single morning after I do my exercise. It's pure plant-based protein, non-GMO, all natural, all organic, made in the USA, and they've got hundreds of products to choose from, not only for you, but for your pets. I highly recommend you check out vandersteelhealth.com, where you can get a promo code and a discount for up to $120 off your order. And Bella Grace is another elixir I also add to my regimen every single day because, again, I believe in increasing your body's ability to make and manufacture collagen, which is essential for brain health, believe it or not. And Bella Grace has a beautiful website at anv.bellagraceglobal.com. They have a delicious elixir, as I said, and it helps with collagen production. It's becoming quickly recognized as the greatest health and wellness product of our time when it comes to collagen production. It also includes real astaxanthin and cat's claw, which allows that blood-brain barrier to be transmitted across to get that collagen development into your brain. Really, really good stuff. So go to anv.bellagraceglobal.com. Okay, joining me now, Florida congressional candidate Mara Macy. Boy, she's a spitfire. I got introduced to her last week, had a phone call with her and said, when can we get you on? She joins me now to talk to us about why she's running. And is Florida really a free state? Mara, it's good to have you this evening. Thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me, Ann. It's great to be here.
Okay, so let's talk to our audience. Let's tell everybody a little bit about Mara Macy, to whom you're married, and why you decided, you're going to have to get into this thing called sausage making, known as the political campaign season, or sleason, as I like to say.
So my husband is the DMed whistleblower that went viral talking about health issues, particularly amongst pilots. It was on several different media outlets. He put it on Twitter, and he was ordered within 24 hours to take it down by his commanding officer. I was already in the race at that time. I had actually run in 2022 I was in the race for about 2.5 months, 3 months, and I got a very late start there, but I jumped to this whole thing because of the way our military was being treated and the lack of caring and response from our Congress.
Okay, so I want to just rewind the clock because DMed whistleblower, the Department of Defense's medical epidemiological database, and to our audience that doesn't remember, though we've done extensive reporting on this, that is the gold standard database for the health and wellness of our nation's military. They track every single disease known to man in that database. And the whistleblower that came forward exposed the fact that in the first 11 months of 2021, when they started mandating the shots, thanks to the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, Demon, that they saw an 1,100% increase in all-cause mortality across all disease states. So if you broke it down by cancer and cardiovascular and neurological and so on and so forth, you saw varying degrees of hockey stick increase in detrimental health outcomes after the COVID shot. So this was a big deal, and that had to have some sort of deleterious impact on your family, having him, be put under the microscope by his own employer after coming forward. What was that like?
Well, we're not stranger to that because here in Florida, I actually do a lot of behind the scenes work on trying to expose the corruption within our own party, the Republican Party of Florida. And at one point, we had even been essentially doxxed by them because we were speaking out against what they're doing behind the scenes. And I think at this point, most people in the nation have just saw what happened to the chair of the RPOF, where he was forced to step down, and we have a newly elected chair. So we made that decision a long time ago. My husband was forcibly removed from a political event for confronting the man who doxed us, and that was done by the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. So let's remember, sheriff is a political seat. So we are no stranger to pushback from the government, and we know what we're getting into. And the fact of the matter is having children and knowing that this country was based on liberty and justice for all, right? That's what we say. So if that's the case, then we have to fight for that, because if we don't fight for that, our kids aren't going to have a future. Our country isn't going to have a future. So just like the people in the Revolutionary War and every other war that has actually been fought for this country, we are willing to do everything it takes to save our nation.
Well, that's admirable. So let's talk about running for Congress, because, from where I'm sitting, Mara, and I mean this in all due respect, Washington, D.C. is nothing more than a dumpster fire of a district of criminals, a district of corruption. We just haven't seen what we needed to make the people back here in America and land of the Republic to feel like our voices are being heard. And every time they have a hearing of some kind, it's another dog and pony show. And we can go all the way back to Trey Gowdy and beyond, with all the grandstanding and screaming and yelling. And it looks like we're going to get somewhere and we go nowhere. Nobody's ever held to account. So how does your decision to run for Congress reflect on your ability to actually impact that? What do you have as a plan that will help change the corruption in Washington, D.C., so that we, the people, feel like A, we're heard, B, we're going to get accountability?
Yes. So while I know there are several grassroots candidates that actually represent the people running, and we really do hope for the most of those candidates to win their races, and we wouldn't have to be there alone. We wouldn't have to be the 1 or 2 out of 435. But granted, say 25 of us win, that's still not enough to overtake the uniparty establishment. The idea of me going to Congress isn't necessarily because I'll be able to get anything done immediately. I might not even be there when things do get done. It might be something that I laid the groundwork for. However, the point is to get there and to be transparent with the American people. So whatever goes on behind the scenes where they're trying to make deals and not be public about it, kind of the same thing that you're talking about, where we always think there's going to be accountability, but at the end of the day, we won't push on this if you don't push on that, or we won't include this in the bill if you don't include that, or vice versa. And the fact is, the people are left in the dark, even with George Santos. And I've said this several times, even with George Santos, he's out saying, well, now that you've expelled me, I'm going to expose your corruption. The fact of the matter is, the right time to expose the corruption was when he was in office. So if you know there's corruption going on, it's time to expose it right then and there. You don't wait until you're not going to get any favors, or you're not going to be capable of providing any favors. We need to be open with the American people. And once they understand what's going on, then and only then will they actually look further into who they're electing, and possibly, hopefully, start electing people that represent them and not the establishment.
Okay, so who do you see as a potential ally as you embark on this mission up there?
And when you say that, do you mean that's already currently serving, or do you mean of other candidates?
Well, let's start with those that are currently serving. Are there any individuals serving in Congress right now? I don't even like to use the word serving. How about taking from the American people while they're in Congress? Are there any individuals that are in Congress right now that actually you think may be an ally that would be of the same mindset and would decide to not feel like they may have a partner in quotes exposing the crimes, to stand up and do exactly what you're saying? Because so far, I don't really see anybody in Congress doing what you're saying you would like to do. And I think it's wonderful. We need to have this breath of fresh air there. But I'm just wondering, will you find allies? Have you pegged any so far that you think will join you in this crusade to be transparent?
Sure. So I'm like you. I don't have many that I trust. I don't trust people in general because I have seen how people do things that will benefit them opposed to what will benefit what's right. There's a lack of integrity. I do believe right now at this moment, I feel confident with Eli Crane. Ask me again tomorrow. That's what I say. I don't know in the next week, in the next month, in the next year, if I will still feel that confidence behind Eli. But right now, he is the one on the House side that I do have a sense could be an ally. In the Senate, I still highly respect Rand Paul. I respect his father. I really wish I kind of have the secret hope that he had become Speaker of the House. I know he's old and retired, not too old. I think he's only in his early 80s, and that's fairly still young at this point with the way we've been progressing in terms of lifespan. But Ron Paul is he's a visionary, in my opinion. The man, if we had only listened.
Right. If we had only listened, exactly. Okay. Is there anybody from Florida that you think is going to be of help at all? You're from Florida. You're running from Florida, Congressional District 5, right?
Correct. Not her. I don't have full confidence in anyone currently in office. So
Okay.
I'm not saying that there aren't necessarily people that couldn't be allies, but I'm just saying the full confidence doesn't, I don't really subscribe to any of that at the moment in terms of our politicians.
Okay, because recently we've just now seen Speaker Johnson, capitulate to a big spending bill, and it just seems as if we're getting more of the same. It's another horse of the same color. There was the big kerfuffle led by Matt Gaetz, and it looked like a valiant effort. And I talked to many people who said, "Ann, it's a big mistake. You don't want to do this." And now we're back to where it seems like we were. Unless you're seeing it differently, can you color this any
No.
differently than I see it?
No, I don't see it differently. I think the problem that we have is that when those speaker votes were up in the House, the people that are supposed to be representing us, rather than doing what their constituents wanted them to do, were doing what they wanted to do. And that comes right back to McCarthy. I don't know a singular person when I was campaigning in 2022 who wanted Kevin McCarthy to be the Speaker of the House. So we have a huge disconnect between the constituents and our representatives. And if we had the vast majority of the House to vote for the person that we want to be the Speaker of the House, then I think that we probably have less of an issue. I'm not saying that there's anyone that I would personally prefer to be the Speaker of the House, because like I said, I don't really trust any of them. But we need to listen to the people before we start just saying, I know better than you. I think people are sick of the I know better than you. It's that is the attitude that got us into the situation we are in right now. And that's a lot of debt, and with open borders, and with a very depleted military. So
Yeah.
I think we're sick of hearing that.
Yeah. You brought up open borders. So let's talk about border security and immigration. It is one of your top issues on your website, and it's been an issue near and dear to me as I head back down to Panama on Sunday for Operation Burning Edge. I'll be down there again next week in the jungle in Darien with the invaders, and these are criminals that are coming across our border every day. I can't even call them illegal immigrants. They are truly criminal invaders. You see this as clearly a threat. What would you propose that we can do to effectuate the change, other than the obvious, which is close the border? What can Americans do right now, and what can you do as a congresswoman?
Well, there isn't much Americans can do right now because our government isn't listening to us. They're not listening to what we want to be done. And I mean,
And why is that?
My husband, because they don't care. They get money from special interest groups and lobbyists. They're not. The leash that they are on does not belong to us. It belongs to the source of their money. And that is the case for all political offices, from the very lowest office you can think of all the way to the top. Money comes on a leash, and they are going to do what the people who give them money ask them to do, which is why we find ourselves being unheard no matter whether you're left or right or center, it doesn't matter. We all seem to have a problem with our representatives doing what we want them to do. We don't trust our government because there's a lack of accountability. And that kind of comes in on both sides. I know that people on the left seem to think that Trump should be in prison. People on the right seem to think that Biden should be in prison. Do we even know the truth at this point? We all believe we have the truth, but essentially they shouldn't be contradictory. Truth should not be contradictory. So if our government were actually doing their job, then we would know what the truth is. But they like to keep us thinking the other group is the enemy.
That would be called psychological warfare now, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
Which is what I feel like we're living through every minute of the day. It's as if there's arrows flying in all directions everywhere, some at you, in front of you, behind you, over you, under you, through you. It's insanity. But we've allowed this through the breakdown of our election systems, the fact that we really don't have elections, we have selections. And I know election integrity is another issue for you that's high on your list. I don't know if these have been prioritized on your website, but I'm assuming they have been based on the order. Tell us about how you might address the election integrity issue. What would you immediately propose?
Well, what I find interesting is here in Florida, being the free state of Florida, we have had a Republican majority in our legislature for over 20 years. We have a super majority, yet we are pushing mail-in voting, early voting, all the things that you would think people would know better, and that are the way
and
that
ballot
they're
harvesting
stealing elections.
And don't
yeah.
forget, the Republicans are actually a proponent for ballot harvesting, saying fight fire with fire. On one hand, I can understand it. On the other, it's like, wait a minute, right?
Yeah, so Republicans across the country are pushing these things, and that is a problem. I actually, on my Twitter page, I have a pinned post that's about a book about the 2004 presidential election. And ironically, it loses likes every day, so it will go up, then it will go back down. And this book could have been a playbook for 2020. I mean, it was written by Democrats. Let's remember that. So it's not just Democrats, it's Republicans too. They're all doing what is in their own best interest. So in terms of election integrity, these things are all so deeply intertwined. So it's hard to say which issue is more important, or that they're in order, because election integrity plays into illegal immigration. Why do they want so many illegals over here? Why are people asking for those people to go into their cities, particularly Democrat cities, so that they can have a higher number? It changes the makeup of the constituency. So it's very deep in terms of the way that we're not really thinking about it. We're just thinking we have our flooded our borders, and they're just people here that need help. No, they need to do it so that they can have a certain amount of voters vote for them, and also when they redistrict maps, so that they can hit certain markers, and in a sense like gerrymandering. However, these things are all deeply intertwined, so you can't really put one above the other. National security, our military, these things clearly, it's a whole work of art in terms of tearing this country apart.
You're absolutely right. And part of that is dismantling these three-letter agencies, and a lot of, actually pretty much all of these agencies that have now usurped our constitutional protected rights, and have usurped our constitutional law, essentially, by giving an unelected bureaucrat the power to mandate something, which, let's be clear, are mandates laws in your book, Mara?
No. Better yet, Congress has the power to take away these bureaucracies that shouldn't have any say in our laws. And
right.
You see a lot of people in Congress going, oh, we need to get, these speaker votes. It's taking away a lot of our power to get back to work. We need to get the laws on the books and this, that, and the other. First of all, stop writing redundant laws. Right. We write law after law after law in order to say, no, look, we've done something. You know what we need in this country? Less laws, smaller government. I don't need you to get back to work. I need you to stop putting these things through, because I don't need a law to tell me not to do something that you already told me to do in a different law. So we're sitting here wondering why nothing is happening in our military in terms of forcing these EUA, emergency use authorization, medical procedures and drugs on our military. There's already laws in the book. We shouldn't have to be kicking and screaming to Congress to do something to enforce the law. But they're sitting here trying to rewrite a law or add a law here. It's useless. Why write more? It just make it so that we can enforce the laws that we have and let go. Don't write anymore.
I couldn't agree with you more on that one. President Trump was brilliant when he was deregulating under his administration. He was adding one new regulation for every 22 he ultimately removed from the books. And that was quite refreshing. Of course, Biden is going in quite the opposite direction as quickly as possible. We have about a minute left. Term limits are going to be critical, I think, for us to clean house. What do you recommend?
So I am all for term limits. As a matter of fact, me running, I'm not someone who even wants to be a career politician. I just want to set the stage so that we can get regular people in office and then pass the baton off to the next person who wants to be a public servant. This should not be a career. It shouldn't. It should be people just like in the military who want to serve their community, and they want to do it whether at the city level or at the state level or at the national level. But we've made it so that it is a step process in order to get to the national level and make it a full-on career. Start at city council or start at school board, and then someday you might be able to be a senator. It's insane. It's insane because those people no longer represent us at that point. They start representing that money I was speaking of. So
that's right.
Essentially, we need to follow the money and we need to see who we're electing into these positions.
Amen. Mara Macy for Congress, you have my endorsement. I hope you make it, and I hope you gut the rot that is coming from within that 10 square miles. And you can be found at Mara Macy for Congress, FOR, Mara Macy for Congress, and hashtag follow the money. She's got a great website. Her issues are laid out clean for everybody to see. I hope you all will consider donating to her campaign. We do need women like you up there to clean house. And that's a wrap for tonight's show, everybody. I appreciate, as always, you joining me. Just as a program note, this will be the last week that I will be doing nightly news here on the Brighteon TV network. I'll be heading in another direction, more into the documentary and magazine news style programming, so that I can take deeper dives on issues like the ones we just touched on tonight with Dr. Vliet and Congresswoman, hopefully to be elected, Mara Macy. But I appreciate your support, and I will see you again tomorrow evening. Have a good night, everybody.